Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habīb. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who are not sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine God, Yahweh, Allah, Elohim, Hashem, Spirit, Source, higher power, ultimate reality, great mystery, but you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with introduction of our conversation partner for this episode, Paul Werder. Paul is a consultant and founder of Lionheart Consulting, where he has spent decades helping businesses and nonprofits build healthier, more collaborative cultures. His work connects leadership, purpose, mutual respect, and accountability with human flourishing and organizational success. He is the author of several books, including Business with Heart, and has taught spiritual leadership at the University of Sufism. Paula was a distinguished fellow by the Fowler Center for Sustainable Value at Case Western Reserve University, contributing to work on spirituality as a force for positive change in business. To learn more about Paul, please visit lionhrt.com. Paul, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Habib.
So, if you would, please, if you would introduce yourself to our listeners by way of telling us your spiritual story. And
Yeah,
feel free to be to take as much time as you like.
thank you very much. I do enjoy this story because it was a learning the hard way story. I was a social worker by training, master's in social work, top of my class, University of Washington, and I, in my first professional job, I went about 15 to 16 months before I woke up with this nasty sore throat. And it was exhausting. It was interfering with my sleep. I could hardly talk because it was like a fire in my throat. And I went to doctors. They didn't know what was going on. They couldn't help me. Um, and eventually, after being laying in bed at 26 years old or 27 years old for about a month, I told my boss, I can't come to work, and so you need to fill my job.
Mm,
And he said, "Thank you for that, Paul. It's an honorable uh, thing that you're doing here. And I have a piece of advice for you." He says, "I think you're an angry young man." And I said, myself, I didn't say it out loud, but I said to myself, "Screw you, I am not." And that was a bit of an angry answer that I wasn't aware of. I didn't know I was angry.
yeah.
Uh, but I had, unresolved issues from growing up in life, and what was really happening that I didn't know was that because I wasn't talking about it, it was like a fire that was getting stuck in my throat.
Yeah.
And after I, resigned and um, convinced my wife to take a summer off and go backpacking. They told me if you take your tonsils out, you'll be fine. That was the last doctor's perspective. And so I said, have at it, take my tonsils out. And in 2 weeks, I was good. I was good to go. So my wife to be we went on a 10-week backpacking trip
Hmm.
and came back to Portland, Oregon, where we live. And I needed another job. So I went to a very similar facility than the one I had been in before. And just going to the interview, my throat started to hurt again for the first time. And I said, wow, what the heck is going on with me? And
Yeah.
I was book smart, but not very emotionally intelligent is how it turned out. And one of
Yeah.
my colleagues, another social worker, had told me originally before I, went on the 10-week trip, I think I could help you. And I said, you're not a doctor. You're a social worker. How are you going to help me? Well, she
Right.
knew about emotional intelligence. And she had me sitting in a chair across from an empty chair. And she said, tell the person, put anybody in that chair you want to put in and tell them how angry you are. And I thought it was really corny, but dang it, it worked. So when I did that enough times, my throat started to feel better.
Mm,
And my wife to be at that point um, was a spiritual person more than I was. I had left it all behind. I'd gone to uh, school with Christianity in high school and grade school, but I was kind of like done with it because it didn't help me, and it was
mm,
actually harmful in some ways. So she said, "No, let's go to Unity Church. Let's try it." And I thought, okay. And Unity Church was a nice opening for me to see that it's not like what I was used to. We're
mm.
talking about positive. It's a positive experience. It's not a you shouldn't and you don't
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning. And one of the people that helped me overcome this illness said, you need to meditate. And so I started to, learn how to meditate, with a different group than the Unity people. And long story short, I've started to really enjoy and feel great about what I was learning. And
Mm,
so I said to myself, I never want to forget these lessons. So
mm,
instead of my social work career, I want to teach this. I want to teach emotional awareness and emotional benefiting from being real, being authentic,
mm.
not stuffing yourself full of, bad feeling.
Yeah.
So a, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, was starting a consulting practice, and I asked her to join with her, and we did that. And within 6 months, she had resigned, she'd gone away. But I was gonna start a practice of coaching people in business. Do
Mm,
not be successful and burn yourself out. Be successful and healthy. Be successful and happy, as opposed to what I could see in our society. There's a lot of successful people that lose their health and lose their happiness and get divorced and have a bad
yeah.
family experience.
Yeah.
So that was in 1983, and it worked. Somehow I found enough clients to keep me um, you know going, and it grew, and it was awesome. And about 20 years when and I named the company Lionheart because uh, I like the Wizard of Oz. In the Wizard of Oz, the scarecrow needed brains, but the clients were very smart, so I didn't go with the scarecrow. But the lion needed heart, and
Mm,
the Tin Man, no, the lion needed courage, and the Tin Man needed heart. So I named the company Lionheart, and it was corny, but again, I liked it and it worked because what I wanted to do is help people find their voice of their heart and have the courage to follow it as opposed to let their egos run the show.
yeah.
Because my ego was my nemesis that had gotten me sick. And it
Mm,
was definitely outside the box to approach a business person, a CEO, or somebody running a nonprofit with
yeah.
this kind of outside the box offer. But it was, somehow I found I was getting enough work, and it was growing. I was doing well. Um, that was my first midlife crisis that helped me find the spiritual path. And
Mm,
then the second midlife crisis came 20 years later after I started it about, and I had a team. There was people that wanted to work with me and join Lionheart. So I had a woman working with me that had been brought in by another partner of mine, and she and I got along okay, but not great.
mm,
And after about 2 years, she kept telling me, "Yeah, Paul, you don't respect me. Paul, you don't respect me." And I kind of did, but I kind of didn't, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So
yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I respect you." And so that went on for quite a while until she left, and she left the firm, and I said, "Hmm." I'm supposed to be the guy that is a team builder, and my team's departing. Maybe I
Mm.
should look in the mirror. So I knew I had a colleague up in Seattle that introduced me to a 3 or 4 day program that I decided to do in Seattle, and it was about working relationships. So again, I was looking for help,
Mhm.
and I went to that workshop, and there was about four or five people in it. It was a small group,
Mhm.
and on the last day of the workshop, a woman who was a participant, who I had hardly talked to those 4 days, she walked up to me and she says, "Paul, I don't think you respect me." And I go, "Holy cow, how did you figure that out in 4 days?" And it wasn't that I didn't respect her. I didn't know her and I didn't, pay any attention to her. She
Mm.
was there and I didn't care. But I didn't reach out. And so I went up to the facilitator and I said, um, this is what happened. And it's like the same thing that this other woman told me in my company. And that's the reason I'm here. And he said, yeah, you have some kind of dark stuff and start challenging emotional stuff. And I go, oh, I thought I taken care of that 20 years ago. Well,
Mm.
it wasn't so much finished. And so he suggested that I find some help back in Portland. And I thought about who would I call to give me some help. And there was a woman that I knew that was in a healing school, and she took me on as a client. And I said, okay, here's what's happened. I told her my stories, both of them, about
Mhm.
how I had a sore throat and how people think I don't respect them. And she had me lay down on her, and I think the second meeting, on her massage table on my
Mhm.
back. Put your hand on your heart. And she said, say my heart, my heart, my heart. And I thought, well, this is weird, but okay. So I'm going into it and I'm saying my heart, my heart. And she probably had me say it over 100 times.
Mm.
Just quietly say it, my heart, over and over again, laying on
Yeah.
my back on a massage table. And lo and behold, I don't know how many at number 106 or whenever,
Yeah.
I started to cough uncontrollably,
Mm.
coughing something up.
Yeah.
And then I started crying uncontrollably after that for a
Mm.
minute or two.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long it was, and then the third thing that happened, I was laughing uncontrollably. So after this whole episode was going on, she was walking around the table trying to, support me without touching me and just
Right.
like letting me cough and then cry and then laugh. And then I just kind of calmed down and she said, wow, that those things do happen, but not usually on your second session. So I went home and I told my wife, oh, this is what happened. It was amazing. I had this experience that I popped something up and cried and laughed and she said, well, I think I want to go see her too. So my wife said, I'm going to get a session with her.
Yeah.
So she did. And the person that uh, was the healer took one look at my wife and said, oh my gosh, you are a healer. She didn't even hardly talk to her before she says, you're a
Mm.
healer. You need to attend the school that I go to.
Yeah.
And so my wife was looking for what was next in her life.
Yeah.
And the school, of course, was the University of, what's now called the University of Sufism. And so the two of them were, students in that school. And my inclination was, nah, I don't know about that. And I don't know about that. So I hesitated. A year later, uh, my wife invited me to come to one of their sessions and meet the teachers, and I did. And I decided, this is good. I want to try this experience. So I signed up to come to the school. And the short version of the story is I was so grateful, so empowered, so filled with peace and love that I hadn't ever experienced before. Like at the beginning of the journey, 20 years before, I says, I never want to forget this, And so at some point, about the third year of my schooling, I asked the head of school, hey, is there a possibility that you could imagine me being a teacher here? And he says, yeah, the door's open for you. And so I got to be part of the faculty of this school. And I had my gift that God gave me was teaching people how to be successful in the world. Back to my Lionheart business. So I have a practice of guiding people in their service projects when they get to uh, the time in the school that the service projects are happening. So that's how I found the Sufi path. Been a blessing and a beautiful life experience that I didn't at the beginning I did not want anything to do with.
Yeah. So, how's your anger?
Occasionally I notice it, and occasionally and then I start to talk about it better.
Yeah.
I start to have little moments where I'm angry, and I don't have physical illness anymore, so I must be getting my anger out somehow in a better way.
And your throat is no more problems or
Nope,
yeah,
never. It's never been a recurring event.
yeah, yeah,
So I mean, I found the cause, and the spiritual lessons and the release of that anger back then was enough
yeah.
to give me a life of peace
Great.
and more love.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So you bring together your experience of healing and your experience of love, your experience of peace that you had at the University of Sufism, and you're saying, okay, how can I help people be successful in their business? And that's what Lionheart Consulting has been about.
that's right. That's right.
So
And I had a yeah. Go ahead.
can you speak more to that intersection of how you're bringing together
Yeah.
spirituality and how to be successful in your work?
Right. Right. That's another great story because for the first couple of years, I loved what I was learning, but there was no way I thought I would teach any of this stuff to people in business. This is
Yeah.
too weird. This is too outside the box. Business people don't want to hear about this. I don't have an MBA. I have a social work career, and I'm good with people. I know how to build teams and help people become better leaders, but do not want to have to talk to them about spirituality.
Yeah.
Okay, so I lived in that little world for a minute, for a while, until one of my clients that I'd had for about 6 years, CEO of an organization that was a significant organization in Portland, Oregon. And I'd never heard her tell me this before, but she says, I have these terrible headaches. And
Mm,
I said, really? What do what happens? I says, I get, I get this terrible migraine headache. And it just knocks me out. And I'd known her for 6 years, and we had never had this conversation before. And
mhm.
out of the blue, she starts telling me about her headaches. I said, well, how many do you have? Oh, about two a week. And I said, well, how long do they last? About 18 hours.
Yikes.
And I said, how long has this been going on? And she says, ever since I was in college.
Well,
Wow, you've had so for 20 years, you've had two headaches a week for 18 hours? Yep. And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh dang it. I don't I don't want to tell her about what's working for me. And because I don't think she's a spiritual person.
mm,
And but I said, well, uh, I have to do what I have to do here. I mean, I never wanted to talk about, the practice of remembrance that I've learned and that makes me happy, makes me feel good. Got rid of my, sore throat. So I said, well, would you like to hear what I'm doing for myself? It might help you. And she
mm,
says, I'm at the end of my rope. I'll try anything.
mm,
And I said, okay. So I gave her the three names that I knew, Allah for Arabic, Allah for Aramaic, and Elohim uh, for Hebrew, of God, the name of God. And the practice of remembrance is just to quietly repeat over and over the name of God in your heart until, you start to feel better. And so I gave her that. I don't know which name she chose, and I never asked her.
Yeah.
But, she sat there and closed her eyes for 20 minutes. And, um, and I was in remembrance, sitting across from her. Um, and it was in Portland, and it was raining, and you could hear the rain hitting the window in her office. And about 20 minutes after we started, she opened her eyes, and I said, "Well, what happened?" And she says, "Well, I don't know because it's I can hear the rain on the window, and it's dark out. There's a lot of dark clouds out there, but this light came in, and it
Mm.
washed away a mountain of sadness."
Mm.
And I go, "Holy cow!" Well, that's kind of like my coughing moment, back in when I was laying on the massage table, and I said, "Well, would you be willing to try this remembrance practice for the next 2 weeks before I see you again?" And she says, "Yeah, I sure will." Lo and behold, within a month or two, she never had another headache.
Mm.
And so I think, well, I guess God's asking me to teach this to people in business. And that
Yeah.
was the turning point. So I said, okay, now how do I do it? How do I teach people about spirituality and business without turning them off? And I had another client who was he was a client and a friend. And so I wrote up a little summary of how I was going to do it. And I had the word Sufi, or I forget if it was the word Sufi or the word Allah in it, a lot. It's about the 2-page paper. And he looked at it and he said, "Let me take a look at this. I'll come back to you with it." And so he took the paper, and everywhere I had either the word Sufi or Allah, I can't remember which it was, he put in Jesus Christ. And so he made me read that and say, "So how would you feel if somebody gave you this paper?" I'd say, I would say that they're trying to encourage me to, believe in Jesus Christ. And it,
Mm.
and he says, "Would it turn you on or turn you off?" I said, "Well, it turned me off." And he says, "Well, that's what's going to happen if you use your paper the way you are written it with, the word, Allah or Sufism as often as you do. You have to
Yeah.
find a better way.
Yeah.
You have to let people find their own path, their own way." And so I really adopted that approach. Is I don't really care what you believe in. What I want you to do is connect to your heart as opposed to let your ego run amok.
Mm.
Because your ego will either, puff you up to thinking you're better than everybody else in the world, or your ego will break, knock you down and make you feel like you're worthless. That's the voice of the ego. The voice of the heart is about love and peace and contributing and helping people and just, being an expression of love. And so you can use a spiritual word, or you don't have to use a spiritual word. And at one point, somebody in one of my leadership classes, when I started to teach it in all my leadership classes, he says, "Paul, I'm not a spiritual person." I said, "Oh, that's fine. Where do you find the most peace in the world?" And he goes, "Oh, that's easy. When I'm up fly fishing on the Clackamas River here in Oregon." And I said, "So how do you fix? So what's the word? So pick a word or a phrase that brings you back to the experience that you have on the Clackamas River when you're fishing." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Use that as your remembrance practice, because and what I'm talking about is that's where you find love and peace and enjoyment, but you can't be on the Clackamas River very often. You maybe go two, 3 times a month, but you need to
Right.
have this experience all the time. So I want you to take a word and use that to keep your heart open towards in the same way that the visits to the river would give you." lo and behold, at the end of the year-long program, he wrote me a three-page letter that said how much he benefited from, you know, remembering, the Clackamas River. So it's like a spirituality is much bigger than any one religion, you
Yeah.
know. And that's what I discovered. And I just totally make it easy for people to pick something that's meaningful to them and use
Mhm.
that practice to keep the peace, to keep centered, to kind of not let your ego run amok when you're trying to, be a success in business. And literally, I have a client who has, 30 plus leaders in their company that have all learned, the practice. And every time they start a meeting, they just have 2 or 3 minutes for the practice of remembrance before they start taking care of their business.
Wow.
And that's been a blessing to me to find people who are open to it and get so much value out of it.
Yeah. I I'm a little bit flabbergasted by that just because I'm thinking about all the companies, and I think I'll refrain from naming some, but all the companies that are complicit in such egregious harm in the world. And how would things be different if they started every meeting with a practice of remembering what brings them the most love and the most peace and the most joy? And
Yeah, that's the world that we're looking for, isn't it?
it is the world
Um,
we look for. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, do you get much into helping them in terms of how to make your business successful, or do you focus more on like this is what you need to do in order for you internally to be in the right space so you can do the work you do from from a place of heartfulness rather than from a
yeah.
place
It's both and, I
both
do
in.
help them with the remembrance and to be centered and calm as cool, calm and collected is one of the things I say, so
Yeah,
that they're not reacting and
right,
freaking out and so on and so on. I do that's a foundational piece. But I
right.
also teach them how to build trust with
Mm,
each other, how to be accountable, how to have your own accountability, be a good role model for others to be accountable. um, Conflict prevention, conflict resolution. How do you talk about things when there's people are at odds against each other, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really like um, leadership and culture and teamwork all wrapped up into
mm,
what Lionheart can help somebody with.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah. It's bringing together the scarecrow and the lion and the tin man.
Yeah, and the scarecrow. Was looking for brains, and I tell my clients, "You're already brainy. I don't need to help you with that."
It's bringing emotional intelligence to
Yeah,
to the mental aspect that we so tend to focus on in our culture.
right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, and bring in the heartfulness and I like to think of that I like to think of the spiritual journey as being the journey of bringing the light of the soul together with the ego through the doorway of the heart. You know,
Mm,
bring the light of
right.
the soul to the mind, like bring the light of the soul to the body. Like, so bring the light of the soul through the doorway of the heart to inform how we respond to our thoughts, how we respond to our feelings, and how we can
Yeah,
act and how we use our eyes and our tongue and our limbs from heartfulness, from a place of allowing the light of the soul, which is that place of this love that is beyond our comprehension and beyond
right.
boundaries and beyond size and so on. So um, I'm curious about a couple of things. One of the things that stuck out to me is that you do not respect me. Um, and, and 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 I'd like to hear about your more of your journey in relation to this ego versus heartfulness, your journey with emotional intelligence um, around respecting others or confronting that part of yourself where
Mhm.
others did not feel respected. If you feel comfortable speaking to that part of your story a little bit more,
A little bit more. Well, I'm clear that it was a lack of respect. It was,
mm,
thinking I'm, a little better, or my
oh,
work is more important or valuable than yours. That was very true with the woman that was my team member,
mm,
back, you know, 25 or 30 years ago. I didn't respect her as much as she needed it. She wanted to be, she wanted to be respected more than I could do it because I just didn't see it, feel it. And
yeah,
I couldn't talk about it with her. So I just, you know, did what I did, and she felt the vibes, and she kept talking to me about the vibes. And I kept saying, no, I respect you. So I was basically, without knowing it, maybe BSing her.
right,
And so she finally decided to leave. And so at that point, that was another wake up call, and I got help. And I learned that and that woman that was in the program for 4 days that said that same thing to me, it was kind of like a messenger from God. Yeah,
yeah,
duh, you still need to pay attention to that.
yeah.
And, to be honest with you, I don't know if it was a gender thing, but as I've learned about leadership and grown as a leader, women are a lot better leaders than men most of the time. So that's where I'm at with it now. I do respect, women leaders, and I want them to prevail and, kind of take over from the men because the men are messing it up.
Yes, the men are messing it up, aren't they? We we don't have to do much to see many examples of the men messing it up. Uh,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So, in this transformational process, in this process of moving from a place of the ego thinking, oh, my work is more important, or I know more, or my contributions are more valuable, or whatever,
Right.
um, I'm curious if part of the that transformation is like a locking into your mind and heart this what we might call in in our tradition in the Sufi way that this movement between the realms of the material world to the realms of the supersensible world. Like, is part of that like a way of anchoring this movement between, yeah, we are in a world of multiplicity, but that multiplicity serves to bring us to the realm of the unity. Like, is that emotional shift in emotional intelligence, was that facilitated by your own journey of realizing within your own heart and soul, like, I'm operating in this realm, but there
Mhm.
is a realm of oneness. There is a realm of no separation between he and
Mhm.
she and my experience and her experience and his experience and their experience. Um, is that does that resonate? Does that feel true? Or was it something else entirely for you?
Um, I might be oversimplifying it,
Mm,
but there was a book that I read. Again, one of my clients said, "Hey, you got to read this book because this is your work." And it
hmm
was called "The Different Drum." And Gottpeck, the guy that wrote the Road Less Traveled, wrote another book, The Different Drum. And I read it, and he had four phases of people dynamic. He
hmm
said the first phase is pseudo community when you're pretending you're just fine, but you're not. Everybody's
hmm
pretending, yeah, I'm good, no problems, and yeah. but you're not. And then
Yeah.
the second phase of communication was chaos. And chaos is now that the differences are out in the open and they're not pleasant. They're harmful. Are out fighting and arguing and nasty. And then
Right.
when you either go from, and when you get into the chaos, oftentimes people go, oh, let's go back to pretending it's fine, as opposed to doing the work, which would be getting you to an experience of unity. And
Mm,
in unity, it would mean, just deep respect and cooperation and caring about each other. And
yeah.
Scott Peck said, the only way you can get to unity is to empty yourself of what I would call your ego debris. All of the
Mm,
aspects of your ego that are being righteous and don't want to listen and not respecting and all that stuff that happens when you're in pseudo community or chaos. So I adopted that model, and when I read that book, I actually got on an airplane and went to experience what Scott Peck was doing with another person, and I said I got to learn how to do this, and so I did, and so that's been a model that I've used in business environment that makes sense to people. It's not spiritual. It's spiritual, but it's not overtly spiritual.
mhm.
Um, so I don't know if that answers your question, Habib, but I can help people see what they're living in, whether living in pseudo community or chaos or or doing the work of emptying themselves of their egos so that their hearts can connect.
Yeah. It reminds me of whether you like in Buddhism, of course, there's the term mindfulness that's used a lot. And there's this,
Yeah.
and that's sort of gone beyond even Buddhism to it's very much becoming more pervasive in our culture to talk about mindfulness. People talk about self-awareness, others use the term
Mm-hmm.
compassionate self-witnessing. But part of that is being present in the moment, being honest with yourself about what's happening. And what you're
Yeah.
talking about here is like instead of circumventing your emotional reality or your thought patterns, having the awareness and the ability to be honest with yourself about those thought patterns or about your emotional experience. So instead of covering it up and pretending that it's not what's happening, it's dealing with it. And you used, emptying emotional debris. So it's
Ego debris, your ego stuff
right.
that's yucky.
Yeah. Ego debris, emptying the ego debris in order to move toward unity, which is that place of deep respect and care and love. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a tall order, by the way. No, not that's not easy to do, even with the people you love the most, your own family, your daughter,
Yeah.
your wife, your spouse. It's
Yeah.
not easy to stay in that place of unity when things go haywire, or
That's
they
so true.
they
It's
yeah. So it's a never ending work. It's never ending work, and you're right. There's a lot more. From when we were kids to now, um, there's a lot of advancement that society has taken in terms of being more mindful, be more caring, et cetera, in most, in most arenas. But the truth is, there's so much more that we haven't gotten to.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I love about the Sufi university and the Sufi practices help us taste and experience that so much more than is in our uh, commonly experienced life events.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't help but think when I started this spiritual journey, I didn't even know what the word spirituality meant, honestly. And I had no no conception of like exploring studying spirituality or going to in any sort of formal environment to study spirituality. Um, and so I had no idea that the possibility of feeling a sense of intimacy with the divine.
Yeah.
It was not in my framework.
Yeah.
And the spiritual journey has brought me to use the word that you mentioned, tastes,
Mhm.
tastes. And when you have tasted, I've used the term unitive love, but when you've tasted that love that makes absent everything other than love,
Mhm.
then you really want to anchor that in, and you want to live from that, and you want to return to that,
Mhm.
and you hope for that for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want
Yeah.
everyone to taste that love and know that love.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you're reminding me now, Habib, of another little piece of this big puzzle we're talking about today. When I was a kid, went to church, and the church had saints, photos of, not photos, paintings of saints, and they would always have this, kind of uh, glow about them.
Right.
And my understanding of that when I was going through grade school and high school and seeing those paintings of saints, and that, oh, that's just an artist's rendition. They're special.
Mm.
And then when I hit the Sufi path and started practicing remembrance, I realized that when you connect to the divine through the name of the divine, with repetition over and over and over again, giving your full consciousness, your full attention to your heart, and having the name of God coming through your being, I feel light all over the place when I
Mm.
do it well. If I'm just going through the motions, I don't feel much light or any light. But when
Right.
I'm really focused and conscious and aware of what I'm saying and doing, I feel that light, just like those saints, and I'm no saint, but that was what didn't understand, that there wasn't an ability to have that experience of light
Yeah.
that comes from the divine and into our being somehow, that you can even feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just a belief. It's an experience.
Exactly.
And that's what
Exactly.
we were, I mean, we were just told, believe it, believe it, believe it, believe it.
Right.
But um, what we've had as a different experience in the Sufi path is experience it, and then
Yeah.
you'll believe it.
Taste.
Taste it before you believe.
Yeah.
But that's not how it was approached. That's not how I was approached
And that's
in
why I
my
love,
earlier days.
right, that's not many of us. And that's one of the, as I mentioned before we started recording, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast is so many of us, that's not been our experience. And so many of us, because it's not been our experience, we're not necessarily in a place of receptivity. Like our
Mhm.
minds are kind of closed and our hearts are kind of closed.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, So hopefully, this conversation can be a part of opening the door to letting go through whatever spiritual practices resonate with you, but
Hmm.
using spiritual practice to let the barriers fall away, to actually
Hmm.
feeling and being with the sacred, the divine.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this great conversation. It's been a pleasure to connect with you. Yeah.
Thank you. You're the inspiration that got us together. I appreciate you very much, Habib.
And to all listeners, thank you for joining us on Beyond Names. Just as a reminder to learn more about the work that Paul is doing, you can access that at lionhrt.com. And before we go, briefly, if you would just pause for a moment and take one breath to reflect on what stays with you from this conversation with Paul. The image of the from the Wizard of Oz is gonna stick with me. Oh,
And you know what the wizard told them when they got to the wizard? It's
what's
already inside of you. Ever you don't need anything. You just need a symbol. So he gave them symbols and told them you have everything you need in here.
oh, beautiful,
So
beautiful.
that's the deal.
You have everything you need already within your own heart. May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to what you already have in your own heart, back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, please like, comment, and share this episode. Please follow and subscribe to Beyond Names. To make an appointment with me, please visit habibboerger.com. Until next time, may you be light. May you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.